8-year-old Max Winters sprinted with everything he had across the sweltering asphalt of the parking lot at Rusty's roadside diner. Tears streamed freely down his freckled face, leaving tracks through the dust, while his small sneakers pounded a frantic rhythm against the hard ground. His heart hammered violently against his ribs, threatening to burst from his chest as he raced toward the only visible souls in the vicinity, a formidable group of leather-clad bikers who were currently lounging beside their gleaming motorcycles, taking a break from the road. "They are beating my mom," he screamed, his voice fracturing under the weight of his desperation. "Please help. They are hurting her." The afternoon sun glared down relentlessly on the small town of Pinewood, Oregon, stretching long, distorted shadows across the diner's weathered and sun-bleached exterior. It was a tranquil Tuesday in May, the sort of uneventful afternoon where nothing dramatic or extraordinary was ever supposed to occur. Inside the safety of Rusty's, the usual crowd of regulars sipped their hot coffee and devoured slices of homemade apple pie, oblivious to the crisis unfolding just outside. Outdoors, however, the deep, guttural rumble of motorcycles had signaled the arrival of the Road Warriors Motorcycle Club roughly 20 minutes prior. Charlie Bear Davidson, the club's president, was the first to spot the distressed child. He was a mountain of a man, imposing in stature, sporting a thick salt and pepper beard and arms that were completely covered in faded, intricate tattoos. He pushed himself upright from where he had been leaning casually against his Harley, a deep frown of concern immediately creasing his weathered face. At 53 years old, Bear had witnessed a great deal of life. He had seen some good things, but he had seen a lot of bad. Yet, the image of a petrified child sprinting headlong toward a group of bikers was a novelty even to him. "Whoa, kid," Bear said, his voice rumbling low as he knelt down to meet Max's eye level. The boy skidded to a halt in front of him, gasping for air. "Slow down. What is happening? Where is your mother?" Max gestured wildly and frantically toward the motel located across the street. The Pinewood Inn was a dilapidated two-story establishment featuring peeling paint and a neon vacancy sign that flickered intermittently. "Room 12, he sobbed, struggling to catch his breath between words. "My stepdad and his friend, they are hurting her. She told me to run." Bear locked eyes with his brothers, exchanging silent, grim glances. There was Diesel, an ex-Marine with a shaved head and a stoic demeanor, Hawk, who was lean and wiry with sharp, observant eyes, and Vince, the youngest of the pack at 32, who had already retrieved his phone from his pocket. "I am dialing 911, Vince announced, his thumb hovering over the keypad, ready to make the call. Bear nodded in acknowledgement but kept his attention fixed firmly on the trembling child. "What is your name, son?" "Max," the boy whispered, swiping at his runny nose with the back of his hand. "I am Bear. These are my friends." He motioned toward the others standing behind him. "We are going to help your mom, all right? But I need you to stay right here with Ruby." He nodded toward the diner entrance, where a middle-aged waitress had stepped out, attracted by the commotion. Ruby Mason had been working at Rusty's for 15 years. She knew absolutely everyone in town and had served these bikers often enough to realize they were not the troublemakers the general public often assumed them to be. She rushed over, worry etched deeply into her features. "What is going on?" she asked, her eyes darting between the panicked boy and the imposing bikers. "The kid says his mother is in trouble at the motel," Bear explained, standing to his full, towering height of 6'4". "Room 12. We are heading over there now." Ruby instantly wrapped a comforting arm around Max's shaking shoulders. "Come on, honey. Let's get you inside. I have fresh cookies that need eating." Max resisted, looking up at Bear with large, pleading eyes. "You are going to help her, right?" Bear nodded solemnly. "We will bring her back to you, buddy. I promise." As Ruby guided Max toward the safety of the diner, Bear turned to his crew, his expression turning to stone. "Diesel, you are with me. Hawk, watch the back exit of the motel. Vince, stay on the line with 911 and keep a lookout for the cops. Tell them we have a domestic situation." Across the street at the Pinewood Inn, Lisa Winters was trapped in the corner of room 12. Her left eye was swollen shut, and blood trickled steadily from a split lip. Her husband of 2 years, Ray Gilbert, loomed over her, rage twisting his features as he gripped her by the throat. Where is the money? Ray snarled, his breath heavy with the stench of whiskey. I know you have been stashing cash. Where is it? Lisa fought to speak, her fingernails scratching uselessly at his hand. I told you, I do not have any. The second man, Ray's cousin Dale, rummaged violently through the dresser drawers, throwing clothes onto the floor in a chaotic heap. Nothing here, Ray. She is lying, Ray hissed, tightening his hold on her neck. Always hiding things from me. Lisa's vision began to swim and blur as her oxygen supply dwindled. Her only thought was of Max, praying fervently that he had escaped safely and found assistance. She had whispered for him to run while Ray and Dale were arguing outside the room. Her sweet, courageous boy. She would never forgive herself for dragging him into this nightmare of a marriage. The noise of motorcycles entering the motel parking lot barely registered through the thin walls, but the thunderous knock that followed grabbed everyone's attention instantly. Who the hell is that? Dale asked, moving cautiously toward the window. Ray released Lisa, and she crumpled to the floor, gasping desperately for air. Do not answer it, he snapped. The knock came again, harder this time, rattling the cheap door on its hinges. Police, open up. Bear's deep voice boomed through the wood. It sounded nothing like a police officer, yet it was authoritative enough to make Ray pause in hesitation. Dale peeked through the curtains and immediately recoiled. It is not cops, man. It is bikers. Ray cursed, reaching for the baseball bat he had brought in from the car. How did they know we were here? The answer hit Lisa even as she struggled to regain her breath. Maximum. Her boy had found help. The door flew open with a splintering crack as Bear's heavy boot struck just below the handle. He filled the door frame, Diesel right behind him. Both men assessed the scene in a single instant, the terrified woman on the floor, the upended room, and the two men poised for a confrontation. What the hell do you think you are doing? Ray demanded, gripping the bat tighter. Bear's eyes narrowed dangerously as he stepped into the room. The boy sent us, he stated simply, his voice terrifyingly calm. Ray swung the bat, but Bear was prepared. He caught it mid-swing, wrenching it from Ray's grasp with such power that Ray stumbled forward. In one smooth, fluid motion, Bear pinned him against the wall, his forearm pressed hard against Ray's throat. Not so fun when someone bigger comes along, is it? Bear growled. Diesel intercepted Dale's attempt to flee, blocking the doorway and shoving him back into the room with one powerful push. Going somewhere, pal? Outside, the wail of police sirens grew louder as Lisa crawled toward the door, desperate to escape the room. Diesel helped her to her feet, his expression softening as he checked her injuries. Your boy is safe at the diner, he told her gently. He is one brave kid. Tears of relief washed down Lisa's bruised face. Thank you, she whispered. The police arrived minutes later to find Bear and Diesel standing guard over Ray and Dale, who sat sullenly on the motel room floor. The responding officers, Mike Crawford and his rookie partner, Jessica Chen, observed the scene with professional detachment, though Crawford's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the bikers. Bear, he acknowledged with a nod. Want to tell me what happened here? Before Bear could reply, Lisa spoke up from where she sat on the edge of the bed, an ice pack from the motel office pressed to her face. They saved me, she said, her voice hoarse but determined. My son found them. Ray and Dale, she pointed at the two men, they were trying to get money from me. Ray is my husband. This is not the first time. Officer Chen crouched beside Lisa, speaking softly as she took notes, while Crawford began the process of handcuffing Ray and Dale. You are making a big mistake, Ray snarled at Lisa. Where are you going to go, huh? You have nothing without me. Bear stepped between them, blocking Ray's view of Lisa completely. She has plenty, he said firmly. Starting with a son who would run through fire for her. Some people would kill for that kind of loyalty. As the officers led Ray and Dale to the patrol cars, Bear turned to Lisa. Let us get you to your boy. He is worried sick about you. The walk across the street to Rusty's diner felt like a homecoming procession. Lisa, supported by Diesel on one side and Bear on the other, moved slowly, every step painful but purposeful. Hawk and Vince joined them, forming a protective circle around the battered woman. Inside the diner, Max sat at the counter, a half-eaten chocolate chip cookie forgotten on his plate as he stared anxiously at the door. When it swung open to reveal his mother flanked by the bikers, he leaped from his stool and raced toward her. "Mom!" he cried, skidding to a halt when he saw her injuries up close. Lisa knelt down, wincing at the movement, and opened her arms. "It is okay, baby. I am okay." Max threw himself into her embrace, sobbing against her shoulder as she held him tight, ignoring the pain that shot through her ribs. Over her son's head, she met Bear's gaze, mouthing a silent thank you through trembling lips. Bear nodded, his gruff exterior softening just slightly. In his 30 years with the Road Warriors, he had been called many things, most of them unflattering. But as he watched the mother and son clinging to each other, surrounded by the curious but respectful gazes of the diner's patrons, he knew that sometimes appearances could be deceiving, and sometimes they could be absolutely right. What nobody in the diner could have predicted was that this chance encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. Especially when Ruby, watching the scene unfold from behind the counter, recognized Lisa from a missing persons report she had seen months ago on the local news. Block 2, Hidden Truths. Ruby Mason could not shake the feeling that she had seen Lisa Winters before. As she refilled coffee cups around the diner, her eyes kept drifting to the booth in the corner where Lisa sat with Max, surrounded by the protective presence of Bear and his friends. Something about the woman's face, even beneath the bruises, tugged at Ruby's memory. It was not until she stepped into the back office to grab more napkins that it finally clicked. Pinned to the community bulletin board was a faded missing persons flyer, one of many that Rusty insisted on keeping up, just in case. Ruby stared at the smiling woman in the photo. She was younger, healthier, but unmistakably Lisa Winters. Except the name on the flyer was not Lisa Gilbert or even Lisa Winters. It read, "Missing, Caroline Reynolds, age 32, last seen in Portland, Oregon." Ruby's hands trembled as she unpinned the flyer. The date indicated that Caroline Reynolds had disappeared 18 months ago. According to the small print, she had vanished after testifying in a criminal case, taking her young son with her. No foul play was suspected at the time, but her family was desperate for news. Back in the diner, Max had fallen asleep with his head in his mother's lap, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. Lisa stroked his hair gently, her swollen fingers moving with maternal tenderness despite her obvious pain. Officer Jessica Chen had returned from the motel with Lisa's belongings, a single duffel bag containing everything she and Max owned. "We have Ray and his cousin in custody," Officer Chen informed the group quietly. "They will be arraigned in the morning. Given Ray's prior record and your injuries, I do not think he will make bail this time." "Prior record?" Bear questioned, his eyebrows rising. Officer Chen nodded. 2 previous domestic violence charges in Nevada, plus an outstanding warrant for assault in Arizona. "He is looking at serious time." Lisa's face remained impassive, but her fingers stilled in Max's hair. "Do you have somewhere safe to go, Mrs. Winters?" "Gilbert?" Chen inquired. "Family or friends in the area?" Before Lisa could respond, Ruby walked up to the table, hiding the flyer behind her back. She locked eyes with Lisa, and a silent understanding passed between them, a flicker of recognition followed by fear in Lisa's expression. "She can stay with me," Ruby proposed. "I have a spare room upstairs above the diner. It isn't fancy, but it offers privacy." Bear nodded in agreement. "That sounds like a solid plan. At least until you decide on your next move." "I couldn't possibly impose," Lisa started, her voice still hoarse from Ray's attack. "It isn't an imposition," Ruby stated firmly, adding with meaning, "sometimes folks just need a clean slate, no questions asked." Lisa examined Ruby's face for a long moment before offering a small nod. "Thank you. Just for a night or two." As the diner started to clear out, Bear and his team got ready to head out. The Road Warriors had an image to uphold, and hanging around a family diner too long didn't fit their usual profile. However, before leaving, Bear squatted down beside the booth where Max had woken up and was sleepily eating his cookie. "You did good today, kid," Bear said gently. "Real good. Not a lot of grown men would have the guts to do what you did." Max looked up at the imposing biker, his young face solemn. My mom says that sometimes the scariest looking people actually have the kindest hearts. Bear chuckled, a low rumble that seemed to originate in his boots. Your mom sounds pretty smart. He retrieved a business card featuring the Road Warriors logo and a phone number scrawled on the back. If you or your mom need anything at all, call this number. Someone will pick up, day or night. Max took the card with reverence, handling it like a sheriff's badge. Are you guys really warriors in your own way? Bear answered with a wink. You take care of your mom now. As the bikers filed out of the establishment, Ruby assisted Lisa up the stairs to the modest apartment. It was a basic space containing one bedroom, a pull-out sofa in the living area, a kitchenette, and a bathroom that had seen better days, though it was clean and safe. Most importantly, the rear entrance had a sturdy deadbolt, and Ruby's late husband had set up security cameras that were still operational. Once Max was settled on the sofa watching cartoons, Ruby guided Lisa into the bedroom and shut the door. Without speaking, she handed her the missing person flyer. Lisa collapsed onto the edge of the bed, her fingers tracing the image. Where did you find this? She whispered. It arrived in a packet from the state police about a year ago, Ruby clarified. Rusty posts every single one. I recognized you the moment I got a clear look. She paused, then asked, Are you in some sort of trouble, Caroline? Lisa, or Caroline, flinched at hearing her real name. It's complicated, she eventually said. And dangerous. The less you know, the better. Ruby folded her arms. Well, I already know you aren't Lisa Gilbert or even Lisa Winters. And I know you've been running from something much larger than just an abusive husband. Her stance softened. I'm not trying to cause problems for you, honey, but if I am harboring you, I deserve to know if danger is coming to my door. Caroline looked up, her uninjured eye swimming with tears. Ray wasn't supposed to find us. We have been moving every few months, changing our identities, staying off the grid. I thought we were safe here in Pinewood. She swallowed hard. I never intended to bring trouble here. What are you running from? The law? Ruby asked. Caroline shook her head violently. No, I am running from a man named Victor Harrove. He is a businessman in Portland, mostly real estate, but his true business is far darker. Ruby sat down next to her, the mattress sinking under their combined weight. Go on. I was his accountant, Caroline explained. I discovered he was utilizing his properties to launder money for a drug trafficking ring. When I realized what was going on, I went to the FBI. Ruby's eyes went wide. You were an informant. I testified against some of his associates. They were convicted, but Victor himself walked free. His lawyers were too skilled, and the evidence was too circumstantial. Caroline's voice fell to a whisper. The night following the trial, 2 men broke into my apartment. I was working late, only Max was home with the babysitter. They didn't find what they were after, but the message was clear. She looked Ruby straight in the eye. Victor wouldn't stop until I was silenced and he recovered the evidence I still held against him. What evidence? Caroline shook her head. It is hidden somewhere secure. It is my insurance policy. The only thing keeping us alive. If Victor thought I didn't possess it anymore, we would already be dead. Ruby exhaled slowly, absorbing this information. And Ray? Where does he fit into all of this? Ray was a mistake, Caroline admitted, shame tinting her voice. I met him 6 months after we went into hiding. He seemed kind initially, protective. I thought Max needed a father figure. I was so tired of being alone and scared. Her fingers grazed her swollen eye. By the time I realized who Ray truly was, he had control of our money and our ID documents. He made sure we couldn't leave. Outside the bedroom, Max had crept away from the television and stood listening at the door, his small face scrunched in concentration as he attempted to make sense of the muffled conversation. He had known they were running from bad men, his mom had always been honest about that, but he had never known the full story. He returned to the couch when he heard the women's voices getting louder, pretending to be engrossed in his cartoon when they emerged. I should leave Pinewood, Caroline said as they rejoined Maximum. If Ray talks, if he mentions us to the wrong person. You need rest first, Ruby insisted. Both of you. One night won't make a difference. We will figure things out in the morning. Across town, Ray Gilbert sat in an interrogation room at the Pinewood police station, his face a mask of controlled rage. Officer Crawford sat opposite him, reviewing the charges. Domestic assault, battery, false imprisonment, probation violation, Crawford read from the file. Plus the outstanding warrant from Arizona. You are looking at serious time, Ray. Ray leaned forward, his eyes calculating. Maybe we can help each other out. Crawford scoffed. Not interested in making deals. That is the DA's job. What if I told you Lisa Gilbert isn't who she claims to be? Ray said, a sly smile spreading across his face. What if I told you she is a fugitive with a price on her head? A big one. Crawford's expression remained impassive, but his interest was piqued. Go on. Her real name is Caroline Reynolds. She is wanted by some very powerful people in Portland. I was hired to find her. Ray leaned back, satisfied with the revelation. Check it out if you don't believe me. Missing person report filed 18 months ago. But trust me, the people looking for her aren't concerned about her welfare. They want what she took from them. And what would that be? Crawford asked. Ray shrugged. Above my pay grade. I just track and report. But I know the reward for finding her is 50 grand. It could be yours instead of mine. All you have to do is make these charges disappear, and I'll split it with you. Crawford stood up, disgust evident on his face. You are facing felony charges and you are trying to bribe a police officer. That is a bold strategy. He headed for the door. Enjoy your night in lockup, Ray. The DA will see you in the morning. But as Crawford walked away, his mind was racing. Caroline Reynolds. He would check the name, of course, standard procedure. But what if Ray was telling the truth about the reward? $50,000 was life-changing money in a town like Pinewood. And technically, if this woman was indeed a fugitive, bringing her in would just be doing his job. Morning brought a sense of tentative peace to Ruby's apartment. Caroline, having slept in a real bed without fear for the first time in months, looked marginally better. The swelling in her face had subsided slightly, though the bruising had darkened to a deep purple. Max, resilient as only children can be, was helping Ruby make pancakes in the kitchenette, standing on a chair to reach the counter. You flip it when the bubbles pop, Ruby instructed, guiding his hand with the spatula. That's it. Perfect. Max beamed with pride as he successfully flipped a pancake. Mom, look. I did it. Caroline watched from the doorway, a complex mix of emotions washing over her face, love for her son, gratitude toward Ruby, and the ever-present undercurrent of fear. That looks delicious, honey. The peaceful domestic scene was interrupted by a heavy knock at the door. Caroline froze, her body tensing automatically. Ruby put a protective arm around Maximum. Stay here, Ruby told them, moving cautiously to the door. She checked the peephole and visibly relaxed. It is just Bear. She opened the door to find not only Bear but also Diesel and Hawk, all three looking oddly formal in clean t-shirts beneath their leather vests. Morning, Ruby, Bear greeted, removing his sunglasses. Hope we aren't intruding. Not at all. We are just making breakfast. Ruby stepped aside to let them enter. Coffee, please, Diesel replied, following Bear inside while Hawk remained by the door, his stance casual but his eyes alert. Bear nodded a greeting to Caroline, his expression softening at the sight of her injuries. How are you holding up? Better, she answered cautiously. Thank you again for yesterday. No thanks needed. Bear accepted a mug of coffee from Ruby. Actually, we came because we might have a problem. Vince has a cousin who works dispatch at the police station. Word is Ray has been running his mouth all night, claiming you aren't who you say you are. Caroline paled, her fingers gripping the countertop for support. He also tried to bribe Officer Crawford, Bear continued. Mentioned something about a reward for finding you. Crawford shut him down, but he left the implication hanging. Police are human, and $50,000 is a lot of money. And a mountain of debt, Caroline finished grimly. Bear nodded. Crawford is a good cop, but he has got 3 kids in college and a mountain of debt. I wouldn't count on him forgetting what Ray told him. Max had abandoned his pancake duties and stood beside his mother, sensing her distress. "Are the bad men from Portland coming?" he asked quietly. The adults exchanged surprised glances. "You know about that?" Caroline asked her son. Max nodded solemnly. "I heard you and Ruby talking about the evidence and Victor." Caroline closed her eyes briefly, torn between regret that her son knew more than she had intended and pride at his perceptiveness. "Yes, baby. If Ray told the police who we really are, the bad men might come looking for us. Then we should leave," Max said with the simple logic of a child. "We always leave when it gets dangerous." Bear cleared his throat. "Actually, I have got another idea. Ray is in custody, but his cousin Dale made bail this morning. If he reaches out to these people in Portland, you need to be somewhere they won't look for you." He exchanged glances with Diesel. "The Road Warriors have a compound about 40 miles north of here. It is secure, private property. No one gets in without our say-so." Caroline shook her head. "I couldn't possibly. Just for a few days," Bear insisted. "Until we know for certain if Ray's allegations are gaining traction, we need a secure location. A motorcycle club compound is the final place anyone would expect to find a mother and her child hiding." Ruby offered a nod of encouragement. "It is a solid plan, Caroline." Hearing her birth name spoken with such casual familiarity caused Caroline to recoil internally, though she refrained from correcting Ruby. Instead, she shifted her gaze to Max, who was observing Bear with a look of pure, undisguised awe. "Do you really have motorcycles at your place?" the boy asked, his voice thick with eagerness. Bear let out a low chuckle. "We have about 30 of them, kid. And provided your mom gives the okay, I might even let you sit on one." The decision was solidified in a heartbeat. By now, Caroline had memorized the rhythm of running. She knew the familiar spike of adrenaline, the rapid mental inventory of what to bring and what must be left behind, and the heavy acceptance that safety for the day meant uprooting their lives yet again. However, this departure felt distinct. For the first time, they were not fleeing in isolation. "When do we leave?" she asked. "Immediately," Bear answered. "Pack your essentials. We will handle everything else." The Road Warriors compound was nothing like the image Caroline had conjured in her mind. Rather than a lawless hive of chaos often depicted in films, she discovered a surprisingly organized community situated on 20 acres of dense forest land. A towering security fence encompassed the property, with surveillance cameras positioned at critical vantage points. The central structure was a renovated barn acting as a clubhouse, surrounded by smaller cabins dotted throughout the trees. "It isn't a luxury hotel," Bear clarified as he guided Caroline and Max toward one of the small dwellings, "but it is clean, and it is secure. This used to be my daughter's place before she relocated to Seattle." Caroline halted, caught off guard. "You have a daughter?" Bear's rugged features softened visibly. "Marissa. She is 32 now. She works as an emergency room nurse." A distinct note of pride filled his voice. "She never had much interest in the club lifestyle, but she comes to visit when her schedule allows." The cabin was modest yet inviting, featuring a single bedroom, a compact living area warmed by a wood stove, and a kitchenette. Photographs adorned the walls, displaying a younger version of Bear alongside a dark-haired woman and a small girl who shared her father's eyes. "Diana, my late wife," Bear explained, noticing Caroline's attention on the frames. "Cancer took her from us 15 years ago." "I am so sorry," Caroline said gently, hearing the residual grief in his tone. It was jarring to reconcile this tender, mourning father with the imposing biker who had stormed into her motel room only hours prior. Max had already claimed the window seat, looking out at the compound where the club members were going about their daily routines. Several women were moving between the structures, some hauling laundry baskets while others tended to a sprawling communal garden. "Who are all those people?" Max inquired. "Wives, girlfriends, sisters," Bear answered. "Some are members in their own right. The Road Warriors might appear rough around the edges, but we are a family unit. Everyone contributes to the work, and everyone shares in the benefits." He turned toward the door. "Take some time to get settled. Dinner is served in the main hall at 6 o'clock. Diesel's wife, Connie, makes the best fried chicken across 3 counties. Once Bear had departed, Caroline collapsed onto the edge of the mattress, the gravity of their circumstances finally crashing down on her. They were fugitives taking refuge with a motorcycle gang. If anyone had described this future to her 3 years ago, back when she was a respected accountant with a corner office and a healthy retirement fund, she would have laughed at the absurdity. "Mom." Max sat next to her, his small hand seeking hers. "Are we going to be okay?" Caroline squeezed his fingers, marveling at his ability to endure. "Yes, baby. We are going to be just fine." "I like Bear," Max announced. "He reminds me of Grandpa." Caroline offered a melancholic smile, her thoughts drifting to her father, who had passed away before this nightmare began. "He does possess that same dependable nature, doesn't he?" Meanwhile, back within the town limits of Pinewood, Officer Mike Crawford sat in his patrol vehicle parked outside the station, his gaze fixed on his smartphone. The name Caroline Reynolds had indeed triggered a missing person report, exactly as Ray had asserted. However, Crawford had investigated further, reaching out to contacts in Portland. The information he unearthed had left him deeply unsettled. The official narrative stated that Caroline Reynolds had vanished after providing testimony in a money laundering trial. The unofficial narrative, whispered by a detective who had indulged in too many drinks at a law enforcement convention, was that Caroline had been the star witness against Victor Hargrove, one of the most powerful developers in Portland. Hargrove had walked away a free man, though 3 of his associates were imprisoned, partially due to Caroline's testimony. She possessed more evidence, the detective had revealed privately, material that never made it into the courtroom. Hargrove's people have been hunting her ever since. There is an off-the-books reward. Crawford thought of his mortgage, 3 children in university, and a wife suffering from chronic health issues that insurance barely touched. $50,000 would resolve a multitude of problems. Yet, as he sat in his cruiser, his finger hovering over the call button, Crawford could not banish the image of Max's terrified expression as the boy sprinted across that parking lot. With a heavy sigh, Crawford deleted the number and ignited the engine. Some lines were simply not meant to be crossed, regardless of how tempting the other side appeared. What Crawford remained unaware of was that Dale Gilbert, having been released on bail that morning, had already placed a call from a payphone on the outskirts of Pinewood. The number had connected him to a generic office building in downtown Portland, where a secretary had efficiently recorded his information and promised that an associate would be in touch. That associate was currently driving toward Pinewood, a slender man named Eli Parker, who operated as Victor Hargrove's personal fixer. Eli did not appear dangerous in his crisp chinos and button-down shirt, but the cold calculation residing in his eyes told a different tale. He had been tracking Caroline Reynolds for 18 months, chasing whispers and false leads across 3 different states. Sitting in the passenger seat of Eli's Audi was Dale Gilbert, who was nervously toying with the air conditioning vent. "So, you are certain it was her?" Eli asked, his tone conversational even as his focus remained razor-sharp. "Caroline Reynolds." "Ray said it was," Dale answered. "She is going by Lisa Gilbert now. She took Ray's last name when they got married. But yes, he is positive. He said the kid matches the description too. The right age, the right appearance. And where are they located now?" Dale shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That is the problem. After the police took us into custody, some bikers arrived at the diner where the kid had fled. The Road Warriors MC Ray thinks they might have helped her skip town." Eli's knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel. "Bikers," he muttered under his breath. "Wonderful." Back at the Road Warriors compound, the evening ushered in an unexpected interlude of normalcy. The main hall, a cavernous open space filled with picnic-style tables and a commercial-grade kitchen, was buzzing with club members and their families. Children weaved between the tables, women brought out platters of food, and men engaged in good-natured arguments about motorcycles and sports teams. Caroline and Max were seated at a table with Bear, Diesel, his wife Connie, and an older woman affectionately known as Mama Joe, who seemed to act as the club's unofficial matriarch. Connie's fried chicken lived up to the hype. Max ate with the uninhibited enthusiasm of childhood, his face soon smeared with honey from the cornbread. "He is a good eater," Connie noted with approval as she slid another piece of chicken onto Max's plate. A woman in her 50s with streaks of grey in her dark hair, Connie radiated a maternal warmth that immediately put Caroline at ease. "He has always had a healthy appetite," Caroline responded, watching her son with a mixture of adoration and amazement. Children were incredibly adaptable, one day fleeing from mortal danger, the next happily feasting among strangers who had transformed into protectors. After dinner, as the adults lingered over their coffee, Bear received a phone call that pulled him outside. When he returned, his expression had darkened. "That was Ruby," he told Caroline in a hushed tone. "Dale Gilbert has been released, and he is asking questions around town about you, specifically inquiring if anyone knows where you and Max went." Caroline's fleeting sense of security vanished instantly. "We need to leave immediately. If Dale connects me to you." "Let him try," Bear interrupted. "This compound is secure. Furthermore, running right now would only make you more visible. It is better to stay put and let the situation cool down." Caroline remained unconvinced, yet the alternative, hitting the road again with Max, with no destination and limited resources, seemed equally formidable. Mama Jo, sensing the rising tension, approached their table with a perfectly timed distraction. "Max, honey, we are about to serve dessert. There is homemade ice cream in the kitchen. Do you want to help me scoop it?" Max looked to his mother for permission. At her nod, he eagerly trailed after Mama Jo, leaving the adults to their serious discussion. "There is something you need to understand," Caroline said once Max was out of earshot. "The men hunting me are dangerous, and they are not garden-variety criminals. If Victor Hargrove discovers I am here, he will not come alone, and he will not care who gets hurt in the process." "We have dealt with dangerous men before," Diesel replied, his calm demeanor contradicted by the intensity burning in his eyes. The road warriors did not earn their reputation by backing down from a fight. Connie shot her husband a sharp glare. "This is not about reputation, you blockhead. It is about keeping a woman and her child safe." She turned back to Caroline. "Ignore the testosterone. They mean well, but sometimes they forget that not everything can be solved with fists and firearms." Bear ignored the jab. "We have safeguards in place, security systems, and regular patrols. No one enters or leaves without our knowledge. But Caroline, we need to know exactly what we are up against. Who is Victor Hargrove, and what does he want with you?" Caroline hesitated, weighing her options. For 18 months, she had guarded her secrets with paranoid care, trusting no one. But these people had risked their safety for hers, they had opened their community to her and Maximum. If anyone deserved the truth, it was them. "Victor Hargrove launders money for a drug trafficking network," she began, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "I worked for him for 5 years as his chief financial officer. I believed his business was legitimate, high-end real estate development, but I started noticing discrepancies in the accounts." She took a steadying breath. "When I brought them to Victor's attention, thinking they were clerical errors, his response made it abundantly clear they were not mistakes at all. He offered me a choice. Join the operation with a substantial raise, or have an accident. So, you went to the authorities," Diesel surmised. Caroline nodded. "The FBI was building a case against the drug network. I became their informant. For 6 months, I gathered evidence, account numbers, transaction records, communications. But Victor is careful. The case against him personally was not strong enough. His lawyers got him acquitted while his associates took the fall." "And the evidence?" Bear asked. "Ray told the police you still have something Hargrove wants. A backup." Caroline confirmed it. "Insurance, in case Victor ever found me. Everything the FBI failed to secure. Connections to corrupt officials, offshore accounts, blackmail material. Enough to put Victor away for decades." "Where is it?" Connie asked. Caroline met her gaze steadily. "The less you know, the safer you are." Back in Pinewood, Ruby Mason was locking the front door of the diner when a sleek black Audi pulled into the parking lot. A well-dressed man emerged, his pleasant smile at odds with the coldness of his eyes. "Sorry, we are closed," Ruby called out, keys in hand. "I am not here for food," the man replied, approaching with measured steps. My name is Eli Parker. I am looking for someone, a woman named Caroline Reynolds. She might be using another name now. I am a private investigator hired by her family. They are very worried about her." Ruby's expression remained neutral, but her grip on her keys tightened. "I don't know anyone by that name. Now, if you will excuse me, it has been a long day." Eli's smile did not falter. "Perhaps you know her as Lisa. She has a son, a boy of about 8 years old. I understand there was some sort of disturbance here yesterday involving her husband." "A great number of tourists passed through," Ruby replied, keeping her voice even and devoid of emotion. "I do not keep a log of everyone." Eli reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, producing a business card along with a photograph of Caroline and Maximum. "If you happen to spot her, I would appreciate a phone call. Her parents are elderly and suffering from poor health. They simply want to know that she is safe." Ruby accepted the card without so much as glancing at it. "I will keep an eye out," she promised, fully aware that she would do no such thing. As Eli walked back to his vehicle, Ruby retrieved her cell phone and dialed Bear's number. This situation was not over. Not by a long shot. 3 days drifted by at the Road Warriors compound without any sign of trouble. Caroline began to breathe a little easier, watching Max flourish in the unexpected freedom and safety of their temporary haven. Bear had kept his promise regarding the motorcycles, allowing Max to sit atop his parked Harley while teaching him about the different mechanical parts. The boy soaked up the attention like a dry sponge, trailing after Bear and the other bikers, asking endless questions that they answered with surprising patience. For Caroline, the respite from constant vigilance was both welcome and slightly disorienting. After 18 months of constantly looking over her shoulder, the compound's secure perimeter and watchful guardians gave her the first genuine rest she had experienced since fleeing Portland. She found herself assisting Connie within the communal kitchen. The familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables and stirring pots was soothing in its normalcy. "You have got good knife skills," Connie observed as Caroline expertly diced onions without a tear in sight. "Professional training." Caroline smiled. "My father was a chef. He insisted I learn my way around a kitchen before I left for college. He said even accountants need to eat." "Accountant." Connie repeated the word thoughtfully. "It is hard to reconcile that with the woman on the run I see now. Sometimes I can hardly believe it myself," Caroline admitted. 3 years ago, my biggest worry was making partner at my firm." Their conversation was interrupted by Max bursting through the door, his face flushed red with excitement. "Mom, Bear is teaching me how to change a tire. Come see." As Caroline followed her son outside, she caught sight of a familiar truck pulling through the compound's gate. It was Ruby's ancient Ford pickup. Bear met the waitress as she parked, his expression growing serious as she spoke to him in low, urgent tones. Caroline's momentary peace evaporated when Bear's eyes found hers across the yard. His grim nod confirmed her fears. "Stay with Diesel," she told Max, pressing a quick kiss to his forehead before joining Bear and Ruby. "We have got trouble," Ruby said without preamble. "A man came to the diner looking for you. Said his name was Eli Parker, claimed to be a PI hired by your family." Caroline felt the blood drain from her face. "Eli Parker is Victor Hargrove's right-hand man. He is the one who threatened me after the trial." Her hands began to shake. "If he is in Pinewood, it is only a matter of time before he traces us here." Bear's expression hardened into stone. "Let him try. This compound has withstood visits from the ATF, FBI, and rival clubs. One corporate thug does not worry me." "You do not understand," Caroline insisted. "Victor will not send just Eli. He will bring professionals, ex-military types he uses for his special problems. They will not care who gets hurt." Ruby touched Caroline's arm gently. "There is more. Officer Crawford came by the diner this morning. He was asking questions about you, too, but different ones. He wanted to know if you were safe, if Max was okay." She paused. "I think he is trying to help in his way. He mentioned that Ray made bail this morning. Both Ray and Dale are out now." Bear growled. "Perfect." Caroline paced the gravel driveway, her mind racing. The circle was tightening. With Ray and Dale free, With Eli in town asking questions, it was only a matter of time before her location was compromised. The road warriors were formidable, but they were not prepared for the kind of force Victor might bring to bear. I need to leave, she decided. Tonight. It is too dangerous for me to stay here. And go where? Bear demanded. You have been running for 18 months. How long can you keep it up? What kind of life is that for the boy? The question struck Caroline like a physical blow. Max had already lost so much. His home, his friends, his sense of stability. Every time they fled to a new town, adopted new names, she watched a little piece of his childhood slip away. What is the alternative? She asked quietly. I cannot let Victor find me. I cannot let him hurt Maximum. Bear exchanged glances with Ruby. Maybe it is time to stop running, he suggested. Time to take the fight to them instead. Caroline stared at him in disbelief. You want me to confront Victor Hargrove? The man has connections everywhere. Police, judges, politicians. That is why the FBI could not get him the first time. Not confront, Bear clarified. Expose. You said you have evidence enough to put him away. What if we helped you use it? The idea was both terrifying and tempting. Caroline had carried the weight of that evidence for so long. The backup drive hidden where no one would think to look. It was her insurance policy, her last resort. Using it meant giving up her final leverage against Victor, but keeping it hidden meant continuing to run. Continuing to live in fear. I need to think about this, she said finally. As night fell over the compound, Caroline sat on the porch of their borrowed cabin, watching Max sleep through the window. The boy had exhausted himself playing with the other children, his face peaceful in slumber. One arm wrapped around a teddy bear Mama Jo had given him. Bear joined her on the porch, offering a cup of coffee, which she accepted gratefully. They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, the sounds of the forest surrounding them. Crickets chirping, an occasional hoot of an owl, the distant rumble of motorcycles as members returned from town. Whatever you decide, Bear said finally, we have got your back. All of us. Caroline studied his weathered face in the porch light. Why? You barely know me. Bear considered the question. When Max ran into that parking lot, he could have gone anywhere for help. Could have run to the police station down the street. Could have gone into any business. But something made him run to a bunch of scary-looking bikers instead. He smiled faintly. Kids got good instincts. Recognized that sometimes the ones society labels as dangerous are the ones who will fight hardest to protect the innocent. A motorcycle engine grew louder and Hawk emerged from the darkness, pulling up to the cabin with unusual haste. Bear, he called, cutting his engine. We have got visitors at the gate. 2 black SUVs, professional types, asking to speak with whoever is in charge. Bear was on his feet instantly. Get everyone to the main hall, he ordered. Secure protocol. Caroline's heart pounded as she rushed inside to wake Maximum. The boy blinked sleepily as she bundled him into his jacket. What is happening, Mom? We need to go to the main building, she explained, keeping her voice calm despite her racing pulse. It is just a precaution. The compound had transformed in the span of minutes. Women and children were being escorted to the main hall while members took defensive positions, weapons appearing from hidden caches. Caroline clutched Max's hand as they hurried across the yard, guided by Connie. Inside the main hall, Mama Jo was organizing the children into a back room, her gentle efficiency masking the seriousness of the situation. Come on, little ones. We are having an impromptu slumber party in the game room. Who wants hot chocolate? As the children followed Mama Jo, Caroline knelt before Maximum. Go with Mama Jo, baby. I will be right here when you get back. Max searched her face, suddenly looking older than his years. The bad men are here, aren't they? Caroline could not bring herself to lie. Some men are at the gate. Bear and the others are handling it. Don't leave me, Max whispered, fear creeping into his voice. Never, Caroline promised, hugging him tightly before releasing him to Mama Jo's care. Once the children were secured, Caroline joined Bear and Diesel at the window. Through the trees, she could see the main gate illuminated by security lights. 2 black SUVs idled outside, a group of men in dark clothing standing in a loose formation. Even from this distance, she recognized Eli Parker's slim figure, flanked by larger men whose stances suggested military training. 8 men that I can see, Diesel reported. Armed, trying to be subtle about it. Bear nodded grimly. Vince and Hawk are on the perimeter. Everyone else is in position. Caroline's chest tightened with guilt and fear. This was her fight, yet these people were putting themselves at risk for her. If anyone was hurt because of her. A vehicle approached from the main road. A police cruiser with its lights flashing but siren silent. It pulled up behind the SUVs and Officer Mike Crawford stepped out, his hand resting cautiously on his holstered weapon. Interesting, Bear murmured. Seems Officer Crawford is taking an interest in our visitors. Through the compound's exterior speakers, they could hear the conversation at the gate. This is private property, Crawford was saying to Eli. You mind telling me what business you have here at this hour? Eli's reply was smooth, practiced. We are looking for a fugitive, officer. A woman named Caroline Reynolds wanted in connection with a theft in Portland. We have reason to believe she is hiding here. You have a warrant? Crawford asked. We are private security contracted by the victim, Eli explained. We are simply here to talk. Armed private security showing up at a motorcycle club compound after dark does not look like simply talking to me, Crawford observed. I suggest you gentlemen leave and come back during daylight hours. Through proper channels. The standoff at the gate continued, tension crackling in the air. Caroline made her decision. I need to end this, she said quietly. Not just tonight, but for good. Bear turned to her. What are you thinking? I am thinking it is time to use my insurance policy. Caroline squared her shoulders. The evidence against Victor is on a flash drive. It has been hidden in plain sight all this time. Inside Max's teddy bear, the one he never lets out of his sight. Bear's eyes widened slightly. Smart. I need to get that drive to the right people, Caroline continued. Not local police. They could be compromised. Federal agents and journalists from multiple outlets. People Victor cannot silence or buy off. I might know someone who can help with that, Ruby offered. My nephew works for the Seattle Tribune. He has been trying to break into investigative journalism. A story this big would make his career. Caroline nodded, a plan forming. I also need to speak with Officer Crawford. If he is here of his own accord, trying to help rather than harm us, he might be an ally. The next hour passed in a flurry of activity. While Bear maintained the standoff at the gate, keeping Eli and his men at bay with the help of Officer Crawford, Caroline prepared for what came next. The flash drive retrieved from Max's teddy bear was copied multiple times. Ruby called her nephew, who was already driving to Pinewood, eager for the story of his career. Diesel arranged secure transport for Caroline and Max to Seattle, where they would remain under the protection of Bear's daughter, Marissa, until the situation settled. Moments before dawn, Caroline stood by the compound's side gate, with Max asleep in the rear of Connie's SUV. The standoff at the main entrance persisted, with Eli and his crew refusing to depart yet unable to enter, while Crawford held his position as a hesitant peacekeeper. Bear hugged Caroline, a woman who had started as a stranger in distress and become like family in only a few short days. You sure about this plan? Caroline nodded. It's time to quit running. Time to fight back the right way. She glanced toward the vehicle where her son slept. Max deserves a genuine life, not one spent always looking over his shoulder. As the morning sun rose over the trees, Caroline Reynolds and her son slipped away from the compound, taking with them not only the evidence to destroy Victor Hargrove, but also the knowledge that they were no longer alone in their struggle. 3 weeks later, the front page of the Seattle Tribune bore the headline, Real estate mogul Victor Hargrove indicted on multiple federal charges. Alongside the story was a photo of Hargrove being led from his office in handcuffs, his empire collapsing around him. In a small apartment in Seattle, Caroline and Max Winters, their true surname finally reclaimed, celebrated with Bear, Ruby, and their unlikely family of guardians. The journey wasn't finished, with trials and testimony still ahead. But for the first time in years, their path led toward home rather than away from it. And it had all started with a desperate little boy running toward the most unexpected of heroes.